Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio, for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Cheryl, W5MOO, Russ, K5TUX, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome. You have tuned into Linux in the Ham Shack, episode number 584 thereof. The most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet, and this is our Weekender edition. I didn't look to see what version. 130 of these Weekenders we have done, or will have done, by the end of the program. And before we dive into our random topic for the night, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
I'm Cheryl, W5MOO.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD.
Well, blow me down. Cheryl's on the show.
Not on an assignment. What's that?
Yeah, I know.
Usually assignment equals cook dinner. Dinner's in the oven, so, you know.
I try and class it up a little bit, by saying you're on assignment.
Well, yeah, whatever. Well, that is my assignment, get dinner done, so.
Woman, get in the kitchen.
She'll be on assignment after the show today. So.
Yeah, well.
All right. Well, as we normally do or have done for many moons now, we will have the random picker wheel pick us a random topic to talk about, and I think we'll actually get to hear it this time. Here we go. Let's spin the wheel and find out what we got. Oh, I was going to say, is it going to do the thing? It was really slow picking that last wedge there, but what it picked was operating QRP and QRP radios. So we're going to lean heavily on Bill here because I don't operate QRP, really. I do and have done, but QRP sometimes requires some special finesse, because you're operating at presumably 5 watts or less. Although I've heard, 10 watts or less is technically QRP?
Yeah, on single sideband, typically 10 watts is QRP because you're talking about 5 watts ERP or whatever, peak envelope power or something like that.
ERP, PEP, ERP, and PEP.
Yeah. All that fancy stuff,
Yeah, I've gotten on when people are like doing CQ QRP on FT8. That will happen every once in a while. Sometimes you'll hear it even on sideband, and I have flipped my radio down to 5 watts to see if I can make contact, and I have a few of those. One thing I just thought of while we were talking about this QRP thing is I was wondering if there's, I guess, each log has a watt thing you can put in like Wavelog, and I don't know, can you search on power? I don't know that I've done that.
I don't think I've ever done that.
Yeah, I'm pretty careful about, especially with FT8, I log what my power is, but I don't know that I've searched for power. Let me see if this is a thing you can do. Analytics, let's see, advanced logbook, filters, let's see, CQ zone, context, I'm not seeing power in this list.
Oh, yeah, you'd almost have to set up a location for it or something like that, so you'd have a different profile.
Well, that's one way you could do it for sure, to make sure that you're always notating that you've been operating QRP. But it would be nice if the search feature actually included a way to search the power field, because I know it is a field, because I'm pretty sure if I go into my QSOs here and pick one, like this last one that I just did, and does it show me power? It shows band, mode, RST, blah, 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 blah. You know what? It may not log power. That's interesting. Oh, no, right there. Station transmit power, 50 watts. Okay, so it is in the database. So maybe that's something I'll have to feature request.
Yeah, or put a pull request in or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, good to know We actually had something to talk about there for a second. But as far as QRP and operating QRP, I mean, for the most part, it can be just like normal operation. You're just doing it at a lower output power. But one thing that becomes critical when you're operating QRP is antenna efficiency. It's always important in the ham radio world, obviously, but it can be particularly important when you're trying to get all of your power out the end of the antenna. So do you have any special tips and tricks that you might use for operating QRP? Because I know you do it sometimes.
Yeah, I do it quite a bit. I have a few QRP radios here. I have a pair of IC703s that I use mainly for doing QRP work, just because they're ideally suited because their top power is 10 watts, and you could dial that back for CW down to 5 watts. And that qualifies for QRP for contest reasons. Some people tend to say QRP is really around, anything sub 1 watt, but I think I can only go down to 1 watt on my radios. And most regular radios will go down to the low power conditions or the QRP conditions. I know my Yaesu goes down to 5 watts, so it can run QRP contests with it. I generally don't use it for QRP purposes just because, for CW it doesn't matter. But when you get in a sideband, you want to have a radio that has a really good compressor in it for the voice channel, because you kind of need a little bit more punchiness to your sound, so you sound a little bit different. And the compressor will do that for you. So if your radio has the ability to customize your compressor or your microphone, generally you want it to be a smidge more on the harsher side. So you can make up volume and stuff like that for low mic conditions, or possibly your voice is very low or something like that. And you just want to squeeze all of that possible capability out through your audio track, your audio path from your microphone to your antenna. So, but yeah, like you said earlier, the big thing about QRP operations is that you want to have the best possible conditions for your antenna and your coax. So everything pretty much out the back of the rig to the wire in the sky. You want to have the most efficient process possible. So hopefully something you don't have to run a tuner with, because anytime you're running a tuner, you're talking about losing power out to heat. So your radio eats a lot of the power. And when you're in those low power conditions, obviously, every watt is important. Even milliwatts at that point are very important. So having an antenna that doesn't require tuning, if you're using an end-fed half wave, actually using one that is ideally tuned for your band is ideal. And trying not to operate on bands that you don't have ideal conditions with. Doesn't mean you won't make a contact. It just means it makes it a little bit harder. And working DX, it becomes a little bit more challenging because obviously so many people are calling DX stations. So you kind of want to look at those cusping hours and times where activity might be waning a bit, and want to try to idealize your operating conditions for being able to be heard by the end station. Another trick to that, especially with DX contacts, is kind of doing a lot of listening and kind of seeing where they're finding their contacts. If they're doing CW and they're saying up or whatever, trying to find where they're listening to that station at, where they're actually transmitting, is kind of important. So having like some kind of band scope would be nice. If you don't have that, just constantly kind of tuning around in your other VFO while you're listening to them make contact. You want to kind of find out where they're going, and then you want to see where they're tracking, because sometimes they track up the band and sometimes they track down the band when they're trying to find a contact. And you can kind of place yourself in an ideal location to be picked up next. There's more of a strategy kind of things when you're running QRP. I find also like doing contest QRP, it also puts you in a smaller playing field for awards and stuff like that. So if you find yourself in a very large state where there's lots of amateurs and stuff like that, in a contest, maybe dialing back the power and getting into that QRP category might improve your possibility of actually making a spot on the leaderboard. Those are like the big things, I think, with operating QRP. It's definitely not as challenging as people kind of make it out to be. They're always like, oh, you need at least 100 watts and, maybe an amplifier. And yeah, I mean, that makes it easier per se, where you don't have to use any skill whatsoever to try to get that contact. But I think it does add a little bit of element of sort of gamifying what you're doing, because you're going to definitely use a little bit more strategy for your pouncing around and stuff like that, trying to get those contacts in.
Yeah, Darren just commented that in Australia, foundation class license holders are limited to 10 watts, so they're automatically QRP. So if you find one of those, what are they, 2x4 calls, right? Because they have the F in them or something like that. Isn't that how they do it?
I'm not sure. We're waiting for Darren to answer because he's typing.
That's okay.
We're buying him time. Type faster, Darren.
I
Type
thought
faster.
It was like VK3FAAA or something like that was an indicator that you were a foundation class. Yes, that's correct. I was correct. Yay! I was right about something. Okay. I was going to ask you about split operation. Does that come up in QRP more than like normal operation? Do people operate split? I know sometimes like DX stations will operate split to sort of help out with conditions and whatnot, but is that a factor in QRP too, or not that you're aware of?
Not really. I mean, you're going to, when the DX station is doing that, obviously you're in splits as well. But there's not really a huge advantage to doing that. Generally, if you're heard, someone's going to be able to work you. So if you're calling CQ as a QRP station, I mean, generally that's the best way to play it, because you can kind of sit in a spot in the band and just call CQ, and you'll get people that can definitely hear you, and you're not trying to fight to a pile up to get into a station that maybe can't even hear you because like they're in a city and they have a high noise floor. And because you're at lower power, you're going to be an S unit or two below them. All the people running 100 watts. But yeah, split is not normally something that you have to employ to be successful.
All right, fair enough. Do you find it's like if you're competing with people running barefoot or power, do you find like you get walked on a lot? Like it's really hard to be QRP unless someone is only looking for QRP, or do you find people like butting in clearly not QRP even when, someone's trying to work QRP?
I don't really experience that much. So, I can't really say that that's a problem I've had. I mean, if you're dealing with an unideal antenna, then you probably are having that problem, and that might frustrate you a bit. But generally when I'm contesting with that, I tend to, cherry pick my antenna, cherry pick everything I'm doing about that to ensure that I can be successful at it. And a lot of people generally don't believe that I'm QRP when I'm actually QRP.
So what draws you to QRP? Just the awesomeness of being able to make a contact on 1 watt?
Oh, it's the availability of winning, awards, certificates, and plaques and stuff like that. So I hadn't gotten a single award or a plaque throughout my entire amateur radio career until I moved to Montana and went to QRP on contests. So I've gotten quite a few since then.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's an interesting thing if you're kind of chasing those awards and contests, leaderboards and stuff. Absolutely. So what bands?
I did it by accident for once, for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, I actually won something. This is actually a real thing." So then I started figuring out. I was like, "Oh, yeah, there's less people playing in this area, so yeah, the availability of winning is much greater, and it's easier to obtain." And yeah, sometimes you can put in very little effort. And I have a plaque that I think I only worked like 60 contacts over the entire weekend and got a plaque. So.
Oh, that's cool. So, I mean, obviously the bands work the same way, whether you're running 1 watt or 5,000. But do you find that you're more successful on any band in particular?
Anything 40 meters and higher generally is is better, just because the noise conditions on 80 and sometimes 40 can be bad, but 80 and 160 becomes a little bit more problematic because you're really down in the noise floor for most people, unless it's a winter contest or something like that, and the bands are a smidge quieter.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you do like FT8, or I always wonder where people are on FT8, because that's supposed to be weak signal stuff, so it kind of lends itself to QRP operation. However, like when I'm doing FT8, it's generally not QRP. I'm usually running 40 or 50 watts. But when you do it, are you generally QRP or?
I think my radio right now is set at 20 watts, so that's about where I run it normally for just FT8. Occasionally, it depends on the band, really. Sometimes I'll bump it up if it's a really noisy band. But I think I could probably work as many contacts just straight QRP as I do regular, at least in the FT8, because it really kind of levels the playing field. Sometimes if you're too powerful of a signal there, you'll actually create harmonics of yourself. And you probably see this where you see two decodes from the same person. Sometimes that's just because they're very close in, but sometimes they're splashing so much signal into their ALC of their rig that it's actually just creating reflections.
So how do you mentioned adjusting your audio to sort of compensate for the lack of power, giving yourself a little more, oomph out there for what power you're putting out. So on your rigs, what you mentioned compression and stuff like that. So how do you normally adjust those?
Well, with the IC703, and I'm not selling ICOM radios, it just has such a great compressor in it. I mean, I probably think it's like one of the best that they've ever put in a rig. Clearly, the IC7100 does not have that same processor, and I think it's just something very unique to that class of the 703, the 706 units. It's just very punchy. And I haven't come across a rig that really has that kind of sound that comes out of it through the signal. I mean, you probably can fake it with some of the more modern radios that have a lot of customizations and equalization and compression all built in, where you can really tailor your audio your audio sound through that sideband signal.
Yeah, I don't know what the IC7100 has as far as doing compression. I know it has some stuff, and of course you've just got your straight like mic gains and things like that. And I know because the FT710 is a digital rig, it's got a lot in the way of digital signal processing, both inbound and outbound. And I haven't even explored any of those things, because I know you can do quite a bit with outbound signal processing. So I should probably explore that if I ever want to do any QRP work, which I probably should. It sounds like it could be, a fun challenge.
Yeah, and this is a great thing too to use as web SDRs for, to try to like just do some your own testing and stuff like that. Sometimes it's very hard to test what you sound like locally. I mean, even just transmitting it into a dummy load and then trying to use another radio to listen to you and stuff like that. So I tend to will use like a web SDR that I have a good path with, and then I'll just play around with, turning compressor on, compressor off. And then if I'm on the other radio, just moving the power around a little bit, seeing what the difference is. And I mean, that's a great experiment for those that want to just try to see what they sound like differently. They can try, their 100-watt full signal, and then just dial it back to QRP and see if you can still hear yourself there. And you'll be surprised that, if you were S9 before, you're probably only like, S7, S6, 6.5, something like that. I forget what the actual difference is, but it's not much. It's not a lot of difference. I think let's do the math real quick here. So 5 to 10 is 3 dB, right? 10 to 20 is 3 dB, so 6, and 20 to 40 is 1 S unit. So that's 1 S unit for 40 watts, and then double that, you're another 3 dB, and then plus some. So yeah, you're only losing like a little over 1.5 S units going QRP versus 100 watts. So it's not as much of a difference that you think. If I'm correct in my math, is a S unit 9 dB or is it 6? It might just be 6. So if that's the case, it's like 2.5 S units.
Right. I think because of the exponential way that the calculation is done, the difference between 1 watt and 10 watts is not what you think it is. It's not 10 times. So, shoot, I had another question.
1 S unit is 6 dB. So, yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, about 2.5, 3 S units down. So, if you're an S9, you'll be an S6. Like, that's not a big deal. That's normally detectable unless you're on like 80 meters where the noise floor is like S7 to S8.
Right. Yeah, depending on your antenna setup and how much ambient, noise you're pulling in, which can be a lot.
Yeah.
I was going to say that like rigs like the FT710 can also record QSOs. You can record like both sides of what's going on. So you can record a QSO and hear afterwards what both sides sounded like. So
right. You don't have an indication of what you sound like on their end though. So that's the thing you kind of miss.
Right, but you should be able to detect how the rig is processing your voice a little bit. I mean, you don't necessarily know how that's going to go out over the air, but you're going to be able to tell what the rig is doing as far as processing that signal.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, unless anybody in the chat has any questions, Darren's talking about his KX3 for POTA operation. I think the KX3 is a very popular choice. Any of the Elecraft stuff is super popular for low power and POTA work. You have a KX3, right?
No, I wish.
Oh, you wish? Okay. So you just
I have a KX1. So that's just a CW only rig. But yeah, I use my 703s when I'm doing stuff like that.
Ah, well, very good. Well, I don't have much more. So unless a question comes up about operating QRP or tips or tricks or techniques or anything about low power operation, I think we can wrap this up. Of course, we can field stuff if people think of something as we go through the rest of the show,
or leave us feedback.
Yes, absolutely. They can send in feedback and we can answer.
Tell me we're completely wrong about everything. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I think you know something about something. So
yeah, there's got to be something I know. Jeez.
I knew foundation calls had an F in them, although Darren said that they changed the rule and now you don't have to have one if you don't want one. You can just get an Australian 2x3 if you're foundation. So
yeah, Darren says dial up a few kilohertz so you sound different. So you're off frequency, and then you'll get somebody that complains, "Hey, you're off frequency, dude."
Well, then you can come back if you're calling CQ and say, "No, man, you're off frequency. You come up to me."
The real cheater is to put a YL in front of the mic.
That's true. I tried to get my YL in front of the mic, but it's not working so far. Let's see if she pipes in about that.
Really? Are you trying to pick a fight?
No, I'm trying to get you to pick up a mic.
Yeah, whatever.
You went through all the trouble of getting a general class ticket and now you don't use it.
That's true.
And apparently it's going to stay that way.
I'm not going to deny it, but yeah.
All right. Enough about that. Well, we can bring you in here since you've unmuted because we're going to move into the hedonism part of the show. And of course, when we talk about hedonism, we always talk about food first because, other than water, you need food to live. And Cheryl is going to tell you about a recipe that involves food that not everybody is going to be able to eat.
Including Cheryl.
Well, you can eat it. You just pay for it later. So
I pay for it majorly later. But
okay, well, you can roll right into it. Okay,
this week in the recipe corner, I picked tasso, and it comes from a cookbook, Zydeco's A Pas Salé, which has tons of fabulous Cajun recipes that our friend and longtime listener Hutch, also known as K9KJN, published. He recently told me I could use any of the recipes in the recipe corner, any of his recipes in the recipe corner, excuse me. So I opened up the cookbook today, closed my eyes, and pointed, and this is the recipe that came up. And I'm really happy I did because I love the tasso he prepares. It does not love me, though. And here's a little snippet above the recipe in his book. And it says, how cool is it that we can use meat as a seasoning? Tasso is a spicy jerky made from all of the leftover bits of a butchered pig and is typically used to jazz up the local dishes. Today, people are tassoing everything, including fish, beef, and chicken. This is a simple little recipe I use at Zydeco's incorporating pork tenderloin, but the recipe will work actually or equally well with less expensive cuts of meat. Bill and Russ can attest, after enjoying it at the restaurant that Hutch, runs in Mooresville, Indiana, which is called Zydeco's 5, that it's great. But listening to me whine about my heartburn afterwards is not great for them. So for those who would like to see Hutch live in action, he's been on 2 separate episodes of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, which is produced by the Food Network. And his first episode was season 12, episode 7. And the second episode just started airing last weekend. I can't find it on their website, but we did actually watch it because we record Food Network stuff. So as soon as that comes available, I'll mention it the next time I use one of these recipes. But anyway, so for the meat, you need a 5-pound pork tenderloin sliced into 1/4 inch-ish thick rounds, 5 cups of Worcestershire sauce, and 5 cups of the Tasso seasoning. For the Tasso seasoning, you need 1 cup coarse ground black pepper, 1 cup of kosher salt, 1 cup of cayenne powder, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1.5 cups of granulated garlic, and 1 tablespoon of allspice. Obviously, this is probably his restaurant-sized recipe, so you'll want to cut it back quite a bit. And you need to marinate the pork tenderloin and Worcestershire overnight, remove the meat and drain, combine the Tasso seasoning ingredients, place the Tasso seasoning into a large flat platter, dredge the pork in the seasoning, coating all sides. Layer the pork in a colander, covering each layer with extra seasoning. Place the colander in a large pan to catch any liquids, cover with aluminum foil, and refrigerate for at least 3 days. Preheat a smoker, remove the meat, place in a preheated smoker, cook until the Tasso reaches an internal temperature of 155 degrees. Makes about 3 pounds, and this is a jerky-like meat, very spicy, but delicious. So, my opinion would be to cut back a little bit, like a lot, on the cayenne, and probably the black pepper too. So, input?
Oh, I just love everything Hutch makes. So,
yeah.
Even if it twists your gut into knots, you just kind of have to assume that it's going to be hot. So,
yeah, in the past when we stop at Hutch's on the way to Hamvention, I have said, I want your barbecue shrimp, which will be a future recipe if I haven't already done it, and I may have already done it. And I'll be like, but I need it at a Cheryl heat level. So when Hutch seasons it, he's like, and here's Cheryl's barbecue shrimp. And I'm like, is it going to kill me? He's like, mildly. You'll be fine. So,
and by the way, it's season 52, episode 7.
Season 52, episode 7. Okay, so let me add that in here.
Yeah, season 52, episode 7 is the one he's on. It's Triple D Nation Street Food is the title. So it aired on the 13th of June.
Okay,
and I'm sure it's in many reruns on Food Network. They show
well, yeah. So yeah, sometimes they go on like day long runs of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives or whatever. So that's the Tasso. The Tasso, when we eat at Hutch's, is usually served with the barbecue shrimp, which is also very spicy. But the barbecue shrimp are the size of small ponies. So, you get 3 or 4 pieces of Tasso and like 5 shrimp. And we typically shared that when we had been there. So that's part of that's one of Hutch's recipes. There will be more in the future. So, and for my drink corner tonight, last weekender that we did, Bill mentioned I should have a huckleberry vodka flavored drink. So, and the story behind that is Russ brought me a bottle of huckleberry vodka from Bozeman Spirits in Bozeman, Montana to Hamvention.
I didn't do it. Bill did.
Oh, did I say Russ? Sorry, meant Bill. Meant Bill. Sorry.
Yeah, Russ came all the way up to Montana.
Russ drove all the way up there to get me vodka. Yeah. Oops. Sorry. No. Bill brought me the vodka. As I almost said, I'm staring at 2 separate windows here. I'm staring at the Discord window too. So while this specific brand is not available in Missouri that I can find anyway, Missouri does have 360 vodka, which is based out of Weston, Missouri, and they have a huckleberry flavor. And think 360 might have a wider, area of coverage currently. So, but if you can't find a huckleberry vodka, if you can find some huckleberries, make your own. So, but the recipe that I picked this time is called the Face Off. It needs 2 ounces of huckleberry flavored vodka, 1 ounce of blue curacao, 3 ounces of lemonade, and some ice. So put everything in a shaker, shake it up really good, dump it in a glass with fresh ice, and just top it off. Well, put the vodka and the blue curacao in the shaker. Sorry, excuse me, and top it with lemonade. So there we go.
And assuming you're using blue curacao and lemonade, this was going to be a green drink.
Yeah, a greenish blue colored drink. Yeah. So yeah, fresh lemonade is best, but if you don't want to go quite that far, just bust out some
Country
Kool-Aid
time
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, country time. Oh my goodness, there's a flashback. Country time.
Do they even still make country time?
I have no idea. But the thing with huckleberries is, isn't it's like the state flower of Montana or something?
State berry?
I don't know about that.
Isn't it? I mean, I thought I saw somewhere, read somewhere, whatever, heard something about Montana being sort of known for huckleberry.
Yeah, in 2023, the huckleberry was designated as the state berry, which I've never heard of, but it was through House Bill 880. Interesting.
All right. So yeah, anyway, if you go to Montana, you can be somebody's huckleberry.
Apparently you can still buy a Country Time lemonade from Walmart. So
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Apparently the Missouri state fruit is the pawpaw.
Pawpaw.
The pawpaw.
Yeah.
What is a pawpaw? I mean, I've heard of it, but what is it?
It's a tree native to Missouri known for its large, edible, tropical tasting fruit. While not a berry, it's commonly referred to as the state's berry due to the characteristics of it. Kind of looks like a yellow kiwi.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you go to Walmart and buy a pawpaw
Probably not. You might be able to get maybe a Hy-Vee?
or a farmer's market or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like one of those things that the government has too much time and they just called it like that, and you can't actually buy them and no one actually grows them, but whatever.
Yeah, well, yeah. So,
Okay, well, fair enough. Anyway, I sort of did a departure today because I couldn't figure out a whiskey to review, so I'm not reviewing whiskey. I'm reviewing rum, which I have done at least one other time on the show. I can't remember.
Oh, it's Dominico. The Diplomatico. Sorry, Diplomatico rum.
Yeah, the Diplomatico, which is Portuguese.
Amazing.
Right? Yeah, which is very good.
That's the best.
So
Sipping rum.
Yeah, but where does it come from? I've already forgotten. Oh,
bamboo or Diplomatico?
no, Diplomatico. It's Peruvian, Portuguese. Why did I forget this?
Where's Venezuela?
Venezuela. Okay, yeah. So Venezuelan rum. Okay. Well, this is not Venezuelan rum. This is Barbadian rum.
Oh,
I guess.
Barbados. That's where it should be from, right?
Well, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. I'll get to that in a second. So this is Bumbu rum, and this is the XO version. The XO stands for like extraordinary or something along those lines. I don't think it's actually that, but it's it's sort of like the higher tier. That designation comes out in other spirits too, like brandy. You know, you'll see your VS, your VSOPs and stuff like that. So it's that kind of thing. This is not the normal Bumbu. This is the XO. And they say about themselves, Bumbo XO is truly a thing of beauty. An aged rum that is smooth, rich, and complex, created from scratch by our master distiller. Our XO aged rum is matured in ex-bourbon barrels. See, so we got the whiskey in there because it's aged in bourbon barrels. So, and selectively finished in white oak sherry casks to achieve a beautifully balanced, endlessly sippable rum. This special release is distilled and aged in Panama, where we create a truly unique and unquestionably superior rum. Now, I said it was Barbados because the distillery is in Barbados. This one's actually, well, anyway, we'll get to that. Let's see. Aromas of toffee. We don't need to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that in a second.
AI says the XO stands for extra old.
Extra old. Okay, fair enough. A wonderfully engaging rum that encourages repeat visits. Bumbu XO is perfect for traditional rum cocktails and perhaps even better on its own neat or with a single ice cube. I am drinking it neat, of course. The mash bill on this is one we don't hear about much on this show, 100% cane sugar.
Woot woot.
Rum is made from sugar or some variant of sugar like molasses, but basically it's always sugar. That's what makes it rum. Now the distillery's in Barbados, and apparently the sugar cane from this comes from like all around the Caribbean and parts of South America. So it's a blend of sugar canes of all things. And their little thing says it's aged in Panama, but apparently it's distilled in Barbados and then aged in Panama. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's got the whole like Central South America thing. Just
They're trying to evade tariffs. That's what it is. They're tariff evaders. Whatever.
It's the distiller's equivalent of a Swiss bank account, right? So
yeah.
All right. Anyway, so I read that this can be aged up to 18 years in bourbon barrels. So, and when we come down to the price of this, you're going to be like, what? So, it's bottled at 80 proof or 40% alcohol by volume. Color is a nice medium amber, which obviously comes from those barrels that it's aged in. The nose on it is very nice. The juxtaposition of the sugar against the tannins and the sugar of the barrels is excellent. And then, of course, you have those wine overtones. So for the nose, you get toffee, toasted oak, vanilla, and cocoa. On the taste, you get orange zest, pepper, coffee, and dark chocolate. And on the finish, it's a medium length, pushing towards long, depending on how much of it you drink at once, with notes of cocoa powder, molasses, sweet oak, and pepper. Is very, very pleasing. I think this would make amazing rum cocktails. And you could actually make rum cocktails with this, because even though it's aged up to 18 years when it's in its, preparation stages, when they bottle it, they don't exactly gouge you, because the XO version of Bumbu comes in at $38 for a fifth. So it's very, very inexpensive. And that tends to be the case with rum, probably because of the fact that it's made from sugar, which is abundant. And, I think the regular version of this stuff is like $25, and it's really good too. But this stuff is exceptional. It's not sweet like the Diplomatico. It's not like a after dinner rum. This is a sipping rum you could have anytime. And I find it very, very good. We've had it at a couple of events we've been to. We usually get it at the rum tastings, like at the Renaissance festivals. And it's kind of everywhere. And the bottle is super cool. So everything about this is wonderful. $38. You can't go wrong. And that's for the XO version. And I'm giving this a 93. So if you want to try some rum instead of some whiskey, of course, you'll get your whiskey notes because it's aged in bourbon barrels. But yeah, give this one a try. Bumbu XO.
Have you had the Tullamore XO?
I have had Tullamore. I don't think I've had that one.
Yeah, so that's like the whiskey finished in a rum cask. So that has another XO kind of staple on it, and that is very good as well. If you can find that.
I'm sure it's around because Tullamore is sort of available.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
All right, very good. So, do you have anything? I noticed there's nothing in the notes.
Yeah, I didn't put anything in the notes. I'm just drinking a nice High Life double IPA here that I had left over in my stash in the fridge at the theater that I grabbed on the way home. So, like that's what I'm drinking, and I just had a nice Nica Libre cigar right at the beginning of the show. So, yeah, nothing special that I have in the liquor department here at the house. I probably have to revisit that in the next episode.
All right. Well, in the next weekend, you can look forward to that and whatever else I find to drink and talk about, I guess. Well, with that, we've come down to the end of the hedonism portion of the show, and now we're into announcements and feedback. I did not see any announcements and feedback. I think there was some comment on YouTube I saw, but I'm pretty sure it was spammy. So we won't talk about that. But as far as announcements, just if you can, help support the show by Patreon, PayPal, buying merch, submitting topics if you have any. We always need those. We do have a pretty full slate for a little while, so we're good. But if you think of something, absolutely send it our way. We'd appreciate it. And Bill says he's working on some YouTube content. He's already put out a video within the last couple of weeks, and there is more to come, as I understand. So also be paying attention over to YouTube because there will be some video content associated with the show.
Yeah, and I have to apologize. I just put out a video on SDR++, the brown version, the fork, and I noticed that I was doing it real quick on a machine I was testing, and I only had audio in one channel for my voice, so it wasn't the greatest, but it's up there. But I'll probably revisit SDR++ brown in a real soon video. I was just working on the DX Lab suite inside of bottles here today, but I haven't finished that one yet. So, but yeah, I'm working on some content there.
All right, good to go. So just keep that in mind if you want some video content. Usually I know you try and keep them kind of like short and sweet and just kind of go into the meat of whatever topic you're hitting there. So it's not going to be like an hour long,
No, God, no.
or anything like that. So yeah, just quick YouTube content. And so check those out, and we'll bring Cheryl in here to wrap up with our subscriber supporters and so on.
Okay, so this time for our subscribers and Patreons, we have Joshua Burley. For our Mastodon, we had at Craigify and at K3LOE. At Blue Sky, we had at Takef. I guess that's partially right anyway. Discord, we had Bingleton Zinglewing, Chris, Lucas, and AJ7M Remote. And on our live chat, we had Mike, K6GTE, Husked, which is K0NEB, Darren, VK6EK, and KB3ORR.
All right, very good. Well, that brings us down to the end of the show. Another successful weekender, we'll call it. And with that, we'll go ahead and let you get back to whatever it was you were doing. We hope you'll tune in next week when we have a deep dive episode. And we always appreciate you listening, whether it's live or in post, because that's why we do this. And we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoy putting out the content. And with that, we're going to wrap episode number 584 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the 130th edition of The Weekender. And with that, let's go. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
I'm Cheryl, W5MOO. Sorry, burped. W5MOO.
I got the call sign there for a minute. It's like
Almost like me at the end. And this is Bill. This is Bill, NE4RD, 73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Live recordings are Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Central Time. Our homepage can be found at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast via Patreon at patreon.com/LHS podcast. We're also on Discord, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Mastodon. Contact us via email at info@lhspodcast.info or via voicemail at 190954777469. That's 1909 LHS show. We also have merch. So until next we meet, remember to always heed your hedonism.